Hello, George Hepworth, Grover Park Consulting. In the last video, we explored the Northwind Developers template in Microsoft Access, its forms, the relationships between tables, and how it illustrates key business processes like purchasing and order fulfillment. Now, it's time to flip the script and take a look at how those same concepts are being brought to life in PowerApps. What you're about to see is the current iteration of my PowerApps version of Northwind Developers Edition. It's still in development, but it already replicates much of the original interface and functionality. In this video, I'll emphasize the way the UI design preserves the original general look and feel of the Access template, an emphasis on the core entities, orders, purchase orders, products, companies, and employees, and the screens devoted to managing the CRUD operations and the data validation for those main entities. Here's the app running in PowerApps. If you've used the Access version, the layout should feel familiar. That's by design. My goal was to reproduce the same general structure and experience with screens for orders, purchase orders, products, companies, and employees, and additional features as they come online. Instead of Access's ribbon, I created a custom horizontal menu bar using a reusable component. Say that twice. Using a reusable component. This component is dropped into each screen in the app, giving the user a consistent way to move between major sections of the app. I'll explain the component which created that horizontal menu bar in a later video. Right now it's overly simplistic. That'll change as I add those additional functions. Navigation is mostly screen to screen, and each screen includes a back function to go to the previously visited screen. Phase 2 will introduce deeper navigation features, like jumping directly between related records in a purchase order or the products, for example. Each entity requires a pair of screens, a list screen and a detail screen. Here's the list screen for orders. List screens are built with galleries. Rather than rely on collections, which are normally the workhorses of PowerApps, I used named formulas to reference the underlying SQL Server tables. That approach simplifies the interface layer and keeps everything fresh and fast. Right now it doesn't look fast because I've got recording software over the top of the browser, and that slows things down. Notice a feature that we saw in the Access template. Radio buttons to move between open orders, recent orders, internet orders, and all orders. We can show the filter applied at that point. Employee ID selected is 10. That shows internet orders. Multiple users, the ability to filter by multiple users, will be added in a later phase. I'm planning that for phase 3. Detail screens are where the real data work happens. Unlike Access Forms, PowerApps doesn't support bound data entry, so I use variables to collect the user input from each of the controls on the form and push those changes to SQL Server using stored procedures. I'll explain that process in depth in more than one of the future videos in this series, I'm sure. This setup, this screen design, mirrors the master detail forms you saw in Access, tailored to PowerApps strengths. We have the customer and shipping information at the top. On the bottom is a gallery with the order details. While I'm here, I wanted to point out that some of you may be commenting or noticing or looking at the sort of spread out real estate and the relatively large fonts used in these controls. That's because PowerApps run not just on the desktop, but in the browser. They also run in tablets and smartphones. For example, if I elect to look at this screen as it will appear on a typical iPad, you will see that the shrinking of the real estate available moves the controls closer together, shrinks the font sizes down. PowerApps screens are responsive. They maintain the layout regardless of the screen dimensions. And now you can also see why the original version is spread out using larger fonts to maintain the same look and feel. Data validation and workflow. One of the most powerful differences in this version is how validation is handled. We don't have the ability to run complex VBA. In lieu of that, I moved both the CRUD data operations and data validation into the stored procedures in the SQL Server. Take order processing, for example. Workflow steps like creating an invoice, shipping an order, receiving a payment, and closing an order must occur in the correct sequence. When I select a step by clicking on its button, PowerApps collects the data it needs to perform that validation. What state is the order in currently? Is it a new order? What status? I said state. What status is it? Is it a new order, an invoiced order, a shipped order, and so on? It gathers the order number and any other information required to validate that we can change this order from new to invoiced. When I select the button, you'll notice across the top of the screen a series of dots running back and forth. SQL Server is telling me that I can't create an invoice without a line item. I'm looking at my items in the order and I see I have default values in these fields, but the status is blank and the price is blank and the quantity is blank. That tells me I haven't completed this order detail line. I have to complete that and add it to the order before I can invoice it. Let's try 25 items. That goes back to the database, pulls out the price, multiplies it by the, pulls out the unit price, multiplies that by the quantity, gives me a price. Now, when I click the Add button, that invokes another SQL Server stored procedure, which sends that line item back to the database and adds it. It tells me that there were 80 available. I used 25 of the 80. And now that I have an allocated item, I should be able to create the invoice. And this is quite repetitive, but the Create Invoice button does no local data processing. It gathers the values it needs. It pulls the order number, current status, sends that back to the SQL Server where the stored procedure runs its validation. This time it should pass the validation check for order details. I get another error. This time it's telling me that orders cannot be submitted without a shipper, and the required field for shipper and shipping fee have been highlighted in yellow, indicating that those are the two required fields. So let's say our shipping is $10. I have to save that change. Once again, being very repetitive, the Save button gathers the data, ships it off to a stored procedure, The stored procedure does the work, sends back a response. And now, when I create the invoice, it's completed. The invoice is ready to print. While I'm looking at this, this is another feature that will be implemented more fully in a later version. Right now, printing is not really great in the PowerApps environment. This mock-up is printable. I can print this, but it's not a great experience. The purchase orders, products, and companies and employees all have similar experiences to those experiences we saw in the Access template. This is a completely processed purchase order. Everything is grayed out. We can no longer edit anything because it's already been closed. Products is going to the server, bringing back product information. We have replicated the conditional, well, it's not conditional formatting here. It's the highlighting that indicates we need to reorder coffee. Companies. The list. Whoa. Oh, that's because I'm doing some fancy stuff in here. I'm looking forward to explaining that to you in a future video. This is the list view. And this is the detail for that one particular company. Employees. In Access, employees is done with a split form. I don't have a native split form in PowerApps, but I did have the ability to create the same general look and feel with the detail at the top and the list at the bottom. Selecting an employee in the bottom updates the top with their information, including their image. I'm able to retrieve the images in the PowerApps version. So far, I have not successfully. I've been able to push images back, but not consistently. So I'm calling that a phase 2 option. As you can see, it's already a functional replica of the Access template with modern controls, some reusable components, and a strong SQL Server backend. In the next video, we'll shift gears and start a review of the actual build process, starting with setting up the SQL Server backend and how I went about connecting PowerApps to the data. If you're enjoying the series and learning something, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss the next step in the journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.